The moment that this stuff started happening in 2018, at beginning of 2019, actually, the moment it started, as a believer, the first question that comes to your mind is, why, God? What in the world is happening? Now, we know that God wasn't caught off guard. He wasn't surprised by what happened. He knew what was going to happen. He saw it coming. I think I strayed away in some ways. I got lazy in my faith and in my behavior. And in some ways, certainly nothing criminal, certainly nothing forcible. But I think I allowed a lot of the elements of the industry to lure me away from the person that I knew God wanted me to be. And I think that early on, I thought to myself, when the cancel stuff started happening, I thought to myself, okay, there are one of three possibilities here. Possibility number one, God never wanted me in the anime industry. I wanted to be in it. I saw it as an opportunity to act and perform, and I wanted it, and so I pursued it, but it was never what God wanted for me. That's option one. Possibility number two, God wanted me in the anime industry for a time, and that time has passed. And now I'm to move on and find what else God wants for me. Option three, God put me in this industry. He wants me in this industry. He has used me in many ways, in many lives in this industry. And he still wants me in this industry. And it is the enemy and those who are the enemies of me, or that are not friendly to God or people of faith, that are rather antagonistic toward people like that, that are trying to run me out. And God still wants me in the industry, but the enemy is trying to force me out. Perhaps because there is potential to have a great influence for God's kingdom. You know, I don't mean to wax too religious here, but I've heard a lot of people say over the course of this ordeal, you know, Vic, if you think about it this way, it probably means that you were doing something really good for God, because the enemy's working really hard to get you out of this industry. I have. Yes, I have. And I mean, all good, but definitely a busy weekend. Definitely a busy weekend.
Cool. So how much time do you think I have with you, or you're comfortable doing?
I probably have an hour.
Okay, an hour. I mean, ideally, I like 90 minutes, but that's okay. We can work with an hour.
Well, you know what? I'm at a rehearsal right now. I'm actually in a room at a rehearsal studio. I'm rehearsing. I'm playing a role in a Christmas stage production that's happening in a few weeks, and so I'm just at rehearsal, and I don't think they need me for a little while. So
okay, we'll see how this goes.
Rock and roll, yeah.
Okay, then we will jump just into it, because who knows when they may need you to come to the rescue.
You never know.
Okay. All right. Starting filming in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Culturescape, the show that interviews the geek creators and influencers that built nerd culture. Today, I have with me a fascinating guest, if not a tad controversial. Vic Mignogna is a prolific voice actor, doing voice work in films, games, TV, and seemingly it seems every major anime English adaptation in the last 20 years, including his groundbreaking role as Edward Elric in Full Metal Alchemist, Brawly in Dragon Ball Z and Super, plus loads of other top-rated shows you probably are familiar with, like Naruto, Bleach, or on High School Host Club, Digimon, Pokemon, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Ruby, and so many more. And hey, if you aren't familiar with this voice work, you may be familiar if you are into Star Trek with his incredible Star Trek YouTube show, Star Trek Continues, which has millions of views per episode on YouTube, in which he stars as Captain James T. Kirk, for which he directs the production. Mignogna is known as an actor that has always been good to his fans. He's a popular guy, of course, but he's also a devout Christian and someone that's always tried to make Christ the centerpiece of his life. It's why there are so many videos online of Vic wishing people well, like telling one fan happy birthday or encouraging another who is going through a bereavement to hold in there. Which is why in 2018, at the cusp of a huge box office success and what would become known as one of the worst cancellation events the last 5 years, at least in the world of voice acting and anime, in what was called hashtag kickvic, certain elements of the anime community and voice acting community started pushing a witch hunt to end Vic's career, largely based on anonymous accounts from people that were fans or claimed to be so. For this, Vic almost had his life ruined, his voice actor career cut short, his convention spots depleted, and kind of was made to be a general pariah. However, I am glad to say 4 years later, Vic held in there and things are beginning to look up. So in this episode, we will be talking with the wonderful Vic Mignogna, he's recording this with me from a Christmas play rehearsal. So this should be interesting. We will talk about his career, his beginnings, his relationship with Christ, his love of anime and culture, what really went on back in 2018, and what he's learned and gained from the hard, but I'm sure growing experience. I know that was a mouthful, but I thought, considering your very long filmography, it was something you deserved. Welcome, Vic. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, man. Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. You are a very busy man, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, so it's interesting. I grew up in kind of the time when you start getting big in the 2000s, and Full Metal Alchemist. That was huge around here.
Yeah, I loved that show. I loved that show.
Yeah, and you were fantastic at it. So when I mentioned your name, even to my brother, and he has watched no anime before or since, I was like, oh wow, that's so cool. And then when I talked to my dad, who we don't talk much, but he was like, Zach's the guy from Star Trek on YouTube. I was like, yeah. So it was a little surprising how many people actually in my family circle knew.
Isn't it? That's a little crazy. Well, please tell your brother and your dad I said hello. Okay.
I will. They will like hearing that. So have you ever had the chance, Vic, to look at your Wikipedia?
I try not to.
Okay. Okay. I like to start these usually going to like where people came from, how they got their start, what was their beginnings like. I think it gives people insight into who they are now. It also gives kind of like a sense, like, it often takes these people a very good long time in law work to get where they are. And, we can all learn from that. Sure. So I thought you have a way more interesting beginning than I was aware of, if Wikipedia is correct. So here's what it says. You could tell me yes or no as we go through these.
Okay.
Early life. Mignogna was born in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
That is accurate. Okay. He graduated from Liberty University with a degree in TV and film production.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
It's like a lie detector test.
I know. He taught, I did not know this. He taught English and speech at Trinity Christian Academy in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, my first year out of college. Yes.
Oh, wow. This one threw me as well. He was a summer seasonal officer with the Ocean City Police Department.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. Yeah. So I had no idea that you had spent time as a teacher and essentially a cop.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was. For a couple of years, actually. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a career move, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It was something right out of college. I didn't have any big plans yet, didn't know what I was going to do or what direction I was going to go. Opportunity presented itself and seemed like an interesting line of work for a while. Not for a career, but for a while.
Yeah. And so focus, of course, of yours, if people know, before you even ever got into acting, music,
Yes.
that was like a big passion for you.
Oh yeah.
You were
Yeah,
on, according to Wikipedia, you were on Star Search in 1993, for which you sang the song Worth Waiting For.
which I wrote. Yes, that is true as well.
Oh my
Wikipedia
gosh.
strikes again.
I know. That's rare. It's rare. That is pretty rare. That they're 10 for 10, at least for early life. Now,
Yes.
later on, I don't know about that. But
Yeah.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about your beginnings. I think I listened to a podcast you did recently. You grew up sort of in a broken home environment, which is kind of where you made some connections and you found your interest in what would later lead to your career goals.
Yeah. Yeah. In a nutshell, I was born in Western Pennsylvania, Italian immigrant family, and my parents divorced when I was 9, and right around the time that my mom and I moved into an apartment, I discovered Star Trek on television, and I would come home every day after school and watch that show and fell in love with it, became obsessed with it, probably is a better way of putting it. And I started trying a lot of creative things that I'd never tried before. Building models and making costumes and building sets out of cardboard and getting the family home movie camera and setting up the enterprise model and trying to shoot little home movies and claymation and homemade phaser beams and transporter beaming up and beaming down. And Star Trek, I credit Star Trek, the original series of Star Trek, with really inspiring me and basically jump-starting my creative interests.
Was there anyone in your family or your friend circle that was into that stuff, the more creative stuff?
Oh
like
no. In fact, they kind of made fun of it. My uncles and even my mother. My mother doesn't like me to remind her of this, but she used to tease me about how much I loved Star Trek. She used to call it Star Trash.
Oh my God.
Because because I drove her crazy. In fact, I used to beg her to make uniforms for me, and finally she taught me to use her sewing machine so that I could make my own uniforms. She basically got tired of me asking her to make me uniforms, and so she taught me to use her sewing machine so I could make them. But I started singing in church and school, but I never really played any instruments. I just enjoyed singing and performing, acting, that kind of thing. And then when I was about 17, I literally stumbled across the fact that I could play the piano. I'm not even kidding. I never took any lessons. I didn't know anything about the piano. My mom played the piano, but we didn't even have a piano at the house. She played for our church, but I didn't play anything. And I met a friend and I had a friend in high school, and we both connected over music that we enjoyed, and we started trying to write songs together. He was the one that played the piano. I wasn't the one that played anything. I was going to write the lyrics and he was going to write the music. And over the course of listening to the audio cassette of him playing the piano for a song that we were going to work on together, long story short, I taught myself how to play. And I came to realize that God had just given me this natural understanding, this God-given talent for music. And so I started writing songs, and then I started recording songs and making record albums, and then I was living in Houston, Texas, working on video and film production and audio production, music production. And a friend of mine encouraged me to go and audition for this little tiny studio in Houston called ADV Films. He encouraged me to audition for them because he said that they bought these Japanese animated shows and dub them into English, and they were looking for actors. And so I went and auditioned because I loved acting, not for any other reason, but because I loved acting.
Mhm.
And I got cast in Street Fighter 2 and did that.
Vega, you were Vega,
Yep.
I think.
Yes, Vega. And I really didn't expect anything to come of it. I figured it was kind of just a weird, random thing you got to do one time. But as Providence would have it, they called me back to do another show and another show and another show. And then the next thing I knew, I was being invited to anime conventions, which I didn't even know were a thing. I went to Star Trek conventions when I was a little kid, but I didn't even know there were anime conventions. And in going to those conventions, I met people from other studios, Funimation in Dallas, Studiopolis and Bang Zoom, and a number of different studios in LA, for kids and Do Art, and the studio, a lot of studios in LA, excuse me, in New York. And I started working, playing roles in shows in all those different markets as well. So I'm always very quick to give God the credit for whatever career I ended up having, because I didn't plan it. I didn't strategize. I didn't send out a bunch of demo tapes and knock on doors and beat the pavement to try to get into the industry. An opportunity presented itself, and I stepped through the door not having any idea what was on the other side, but it ended up being, you know, an amazing blessing and opportunity.
Definitely. It sounds like everything seemed to line up. What what was like your main focus for career making livelihood before you got into
I wrote music
ADV?
for ad agencies. I did a lot of independent freelance video and film work. And I also worked with a lot of advertising agencies, writing jingles and post scores and music for television commercials and radio and documentaries, things like that.
Would there be any jingles that maybe people would know? Or
Well, if you lived in the Texas area, you might. If you lived regionally, you probably would recognize some. But I haven't done anything nationally that you would probably know.
okay, fair. So you just came out and it was just like just the right time because you got into it just as anime was kind of penetrating the mainstream.
Yes, it was very fortuitous when I got involved. The
Uh,
industry now has grown so big. It's so, you know, expansive, and it's a lot more difficult now, I think, to get into the industry than it was when I started.
I'd love to get into what that entails. Before we there, where are some favorite projects that you've done as a voice actor or actor?
Well, you mentioned Full Metal Alchemist. I think Full Metal is probably my favorite thing of anything I've done. I've done 400 different animated series, but nothing really grabbed me the way that Full Metal Alchemist did. I had done 40 or 50 shows before Full Metal, and there was just something about the story and the characters and the music and the animation. Everything about it, in my mind, was just such a perfect anime. And so I was incredibly grateful to get the chance to be a part of that show.
Well, and your voice fits that character to a T. Just the right
Oh, thank
timbre
you.
and the delivery is
Thank you.
excellent.
And
Um,
I'm only 5 times Edward's age. So
that's the glorious thing, though, about voice acting, right? Because I mean, more
that is the
traditionally,
best thing. The best thing about voice acting is you're not limited to playing roles that you look like or that you have a physical resemblance for. If you can, you know, if you could one day you could be playing, excuse me, one day you could be playing a a young hero, and the next day you could be playing a homicidal demonic maniac. And then the next day you could be playing a librarian. And then the next day you could be playing somebody's dad or uncle or school teacher. I mean, the possibilities are limitless. It's a really neat field to get into and gives you a lot of versatility.
So so I've talked to a few people that are in your industry before, but nothing too serious. What does it take to be in the anime voice acting industry? It's a very busy thing because I think you are constantly on the convention circuit, which means a lot of travel.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
always hustling. It seems like it's kind of similar to journalism where there's a lot of attention for it. Like you feel like you're getting a lot of publicity, but it seems like for a lot of voice actors, it isn't always the most financially stable.
Well, I will tell you this. Anime voice acting, dubbing anime, doesn't typically pay a ton of money. There are very, very few people who make a full-time living as a voice actor. However, when the anime conventions started, and then they started growing, and more of them were popping up, and then Comic Cons started inviting anime guests and voice actor guests. Those events became a wonderful opportunity, not just to make a little extra money to pay your bills, but also to network, also to promote your work, meet the fans, and be able to interact with the fans and thank them for their support of your work and get to hear their stories about what your work meant to them. So it was the conventions have always been very special to me because I just love people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I love interacting with people. I love meeting new people. When you're a voice actor, you do 99% of your work in a padded box, basically. There is no audience. There's no audience. There's nobody clapping if you did a good job. There's nobody laughing if you said something funny. There's nobody crying if you said something heartbreaking. So the conventions have always been an opportunity to interact with the fans, to find out how work you did was received. And I always did, and I still do, maybe now more than ever. I cherish those opportunities.
That seems to be one of the things that I know many people respect you. And when all the stuff that happened in 2018, they had a hard time believing because generally speaking, you seem to be someone that devotes a lot of energy without necessarily a lot of reward, reaching out to people that admire you or your fans, or, for whatever reason, you feel like you wish to serve them somehow in the Christian sense of the term
Well,
and help out.
you know what? I have to tell you, Peter, you're absolutely correct. For 20 years, I put my email out there early on in my career. It didn't ever occur to me that I would ever, it never occurred to me that I would ever, that the industry would grow to how it has, or that I would be a part of it, a big part of it for many years. And so fans would write me all the time. Like I would get dozens of emails, fan emails from strangers every day. And I would answer every single one of them. And it wouldn't be a thanks for watching. You know what I mean? It wasn't a
Mhm.
glad you like my work or something. It was much more involved. People would write me with difficulties and struggles they were going through. They knew that I was a believer in Christ. They knew that I wanted very much to demonstrate God's love and God's grace towards people. And so I would get hundreds and hundreds of emails over the years, and I always made it a point to answer all of them. I think that's one of the many things that has helped build the bond that I have with people who are fans of my work.
Mhm.
Is that I think they know, and like you mentioned, if you watch some videos, just watch some. I mean, we don't even need to describe them. Just watch the interactions. There are hundreds of them on the internet. Watch the way that I interact with people. Watch the fans and what's said and done. And what you'll see is that I think one of the reasons the fans have been so supportive and so appreciative over the years is because they know that I'm not just doing my job, collecting a paycheck and going home. They know that I consider it a very great privilege that they've enjoyed my work, and I'm very, very grateful for their support and their encouragement. And so I do everything I can to make sure they know how grateful I am to them.
It shows. I think maybe it's something that came out of your respect of Star Trek, your childhood, where you felt like you had this great attachment to fictional characters. Of course, Star Trek probably being it. I know a lot of people would make fun of that, but I think because of what you've gone through, that gave you a sensitivity to people that, I'll be honest, maybe this isn't true because anime has really penetrated the mainstream, but definitely was true in the 2000s. Many people that attend those anime conventions, they may be antisocial or they have very difficult lives you never hear about. And that's why those moments when they meet, their favorite voice actor, oh, it's the guy that did Edward Elric, and you give her a hug or whatever, you sign the thing. That's why it's so meaningful, because they don't necessarily have a lot.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. A lot of the fans that I've met over the years have their own set of struggles. A lot of them feel very marginalized. A lot of them feel bullied and teased and made fun of at school. A lot of them feel like they don't fit in. They feel very alone, and in some cases even kind of invisible. And as a Christian, I immediately saw that as an opportunity to share God's love with these people. I immediately recognized that as, for lack of a better term, a mission field, an opportunity to take the love of God into an area or an industry that you might not normally see it very often, and not proselytize people, not try to get people to join a church or sign their name in blood or, some stupid religious ritual, but just share God's message of love and forgiveness and grace with them. The same message that I heard and responded to, same one that you heard and responded to. I've often felt like that was the main reason that God put me in this industry.
It very well could be. I believe you, and I've heard enough stories. I think that's totally possible. Maybe that is the whole purpose for all of it, your career and everything. I know when it comes to this is a thing. So people who aren't super familiar with Christian culture, or maybe they had a bad experience, I don't know, they get the feeling that Christians are very judgmental and that they're out to convert and that they don't really care about people. It's about the numbers. But I mean, having served on a full-time LDS mission, 95% of the job is just like meeting people where they're at, showing them affection, love, serving them, helping them meet wherever it is that they need to be. I mean, the other stuff doesn't even work. That just isn't how the culture is.
What's really sad, Peter, is that you could have 100,000 people in a particular career field, and 99.9 thousand of them are good, quality, kind, responsible, good people. But that 1% that are cruel or mean or rude or whatever give all the other 99,000 a bad name. And it's the same way with Christianity. Anybody that ever reads the Bible knows that God loves people and God wants a relationship with people. He doesn't condemn them. He has no desire to smite them and punish them and condemn them to hell, like some Christians try to preach. And those are the Christians that give all the other Christians a bad name.
I agree.
And that's not Christianity. And I've often told hundreds of times at conventions, in Q&A sessions with thousands of fans, I have often said, if anyone in your life who calls themselves a Christian tells you that God hates that you don't, that you like anime, and God hates that you wear black, and you need to clean up your act and come back to God, they're lying to you. God loves you exactly as you are and wants a relationship with you. And a lot of things like Christianity, and even in just about any field, in just about any group of people, the vast majority of them are great. And there's often just a handful that give the rest of them a bad name.
This ties pretty well to just incredible. It is incredibly difficult. I feel it was deeply unfair how everything came out. But what happened 2018, of course, Dragon Ball Super Brawly comes out. By the way, I did not know until that movie came out you were the voice of Brawly, and I knew a decent amount of your work, but I did not make that connection because your voice work there is just so different than the more
it's much lower and darker and Broly.
Big success. It was the dark horse that year.
It was far and away the most successful Dragon Ball movie they ever released. I mean, it made more than 3 times what any other Dragon Ball movie had made to date.
So the same time, sorry, not to cut you off, but at the same time, this happens. So one of the best parts of your life, at least career-wise, you also then had one of the worst.
Yeah, it was definitely 2019 was shaping up to be the best year for me in a long time. There had been a lot of significant changes for the better in my life, and I was very optimistic, very excited about 2019. The Broly movie was going to be released in theaters on January 16th, and I had at least 35 or 40 big, huge convention appearances lined up. It was going to be I just moved back to Texas. I have got a home that I loved, and was feeling so good about 2019. And then just literally out of the blue, the very day that the Broly movie was released, this Me Too cancel culture stuff started. I didn't know what to do. I was kind of deer in the headlights. I was like, how in the world is this happening? And there are always, the larger fan base you have, the more likely you're going to have more haters. It's a simple equation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple mathematic equation. If you have 100 fans, you might have 5 haters. If you have 1,000 fans, you might have 50 haters. If you have 1 million fans, you might have 500 haters. You know what I mean? It's a simple mathematic equation. The more popular you become, the higher you rise on the level of popularity and success, the more people come out of the woodwork to try to take you down. They, for whatever reason, they feel that you don't deserve what you've worked for. They don't like your politics. They don't like your outspoken faith. They don't like any number of things about you. And they really don't think it's fair that you should be so successful or rise to the level that you have while they're relatively insignificant, or in their own minds. Obviously, I don't mean really. I mean their minds.
The public image.
They feel like they're invisible, and they want so badly to be noticed, and they want so desperately to feel relevant in some way. And unfortunately, I believe social media has given them the most dangerous weapon. Social media gives anyone with a computer the power to lob grenades of slander and hatred and defamation and lies. And guess what, Pete? They don't have any accountability.
No.
They don't have to prove anything. They don't have to demonstrate any facts. They don't have to provide any kind of, any kind of truth. They can just make up stories or embellish a story to get themselves a little attention. And whoever's on the receiving end of it may very well lose their career and their livelihood without ever even having the chance to defend themselves. It's terrifying because it could happen to anybody. Obviously, people that are more visible than others, like people that are in entertainment, in the entertainment field, for instance, or any high visible person, are obviously have a bigger target drawn on their backs, but that's what happened. The same handful of malcontent, disgruntled fans that always look for something to complain about because it makes them feel important somehow, started a bunch of Me Too garbage. And what really threw gas on the fire was when a couple of voice actors that I had known for 20 years and quite honestly considered dear friends joined in the bandwagon. Now, I really don't want to get into it that much, but I will say that there is plenty of speculation as to why they did what they did. A lot of it makes really good sense to me, but it was heartbreaking because these were people that I had worked on hundreds of shows with, people that I'd done dozens of convention appearances with, had dinner with, gone bowling, socialized. We were friends. We never had an argument. Like there was never a harsh word between us. But their philosophies and their attitudes are and opinions and beliefs are different from mine. And for whatever reason that I don't want to really spend too much time on, they jumped on the bandwagon, and that was when the cancel culture attacks really intensified.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening was people came out of the woodwork who don't even know me, Peter. Have you and I ever met?
I don't think so. I have been a fair number of conventions, but I don't think I ever crossed paths with you.
We've never met. We've never met. And I don't know you. I know nothing about you. I haven't spent 30 seconds in your presence.
Well, now you are, but yeah.
No, I mean up to this point. And even now, we're on Zoom. Like, we're not physically in the same space. We've never hung out. I don't know you. You don't really know me. But it would be as if I got online and just devoted my days to ruining your life.
Mm-hmm.
It literally, it would be as if I got online and said, man, that Peter guy, what a rapist, what a pedophile, what an anti-Semitic, horrible human being. I can't believe anyone would ever, go anywhere near him. He should be destroyed. And you're sitting there going, you don't even know me. Like, who is this person who's never even met me or has spoken with me? And, and they've taken this, this torch, and and they're gonna burn the house down. That is literally what has happened. There are a handful of people that continue even now to try to sabotage my opportunities. They don't seem to care about the 100,000 fans that like my work and and would like to see me at events or whatever, because what they want matters more. And so they make all this noise, and they got me canceled from a very, very large number of events and studios. And if it were not for God's faithfulness, and if it weren't for the kindness and support of so many good people, it might have been a very different outcome for me. And I don't mean professionally, I mean personally and emotionally. It meant a great deal. And so now to me that I got so much support. So now when I do events, I go out of my, even further out of my way to thank the fans, their kindness and their support and encouragement, because I've told fans that they've been telling me for decades how much my work meant to them and how much I encouraged them through a difficult time. And now the roles are reversed. And the fans have been able to encourage and support me through a difficult time. I think it's kind of beautiful. It's kind of
Mhm.
to borrow a term from Full Metal, equivalent exchange, you know?
That's fun. I I think when it comes to trials, our hardest trials, I think they come against sometimes the things that we love the most about ourselves or our lives. It seems like you definitely had a strong relationship with the fans and with the people that you interacted with. And in some ways, I'm sure that kind of felt like a betrayal. I mean, for one, it was hard to believe if these people even were fans because they were like everything that was reported from a fan, it was like sourced from 10 years ago. And then someone would come out the woodwork saying, that was actually my picture. I never gave permission. So it's
Yeah,
like you don't
right.
even know if any of that's real.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but
Exactly. They
but at
would
the time, you may
Photoshop,
not have known.
they would Photoshop pictures. I mean, how disgusting, you know what I mean? How desperate do you need to be to Photoshop an image of somebody who's never done anything to you, doesn't even know you? You could knock on their door and they'd open the door and go, "Yes, may I help you?" Like they don't even know you. How, what kind of anger or hatred must exist inside someone's mind or heart to literally go to the trouble of photoshopping pictures, borrowing images on the internet that are completely unrelated and trying to twist them into something nefarious. I don't understand people like that. I don't think
I
I ever will.
I think part of it is worse because I think much of it isn't motivated by hate. I think it's people just don't seem to make the connection of there's a real person at the end of this. And they just think this is the latest cool thing or somehow or this is the into good thing to do right now. And they don't ask like the big questions. Is this real? Did this actually happen? What are the extent of the facts? None of that comes up. It's just like, hey, it's
And is it
another day
any
on
of my
Twitter.
business? And is it any of my business?
Yeah.
There's a really good question, right?
Well, especially when it comes to like very personal
Yeah.
relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. For instance, I mean, for instance, if I had an interaction with somebody, I'm an adult, they were an adult, it was a private interaction, completely consensual. How is that your business? How is it anybody else's business? That, of course, is a rhetorical question. It's not. It's none of their business. But they appropriate it, not because they want to save the world or because they want to, make it a better place, but because they think it'll make them relevant somehow, or they feel powerful or important somehow. And everybody wants to feel important. Everybody. Everybody wants to feel like they matter, like what they have to say matters, that there are people in the world that care about what they think or what they say. Everybody wants that. Everybody. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. The question is, what lengths are you willing to go to get it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What cost
How
and to whom?
badly, exactly. How badly do you need some validation that you would ruin somebody else or drag them through the mud just so you can get 10 likes on your post?
It's tough. Now, this is something that is kind of still active. There have been some stuff in the courts. And so because of that going on, I'm not going to try to get too much into that. I don't want to get you in. Uh, that's for one, it seems very sensitive too. I don't want to get you in any kind of trouble of any kind. I'll just leave it to these last two on the subject. What was harder for you? Was it the betrayals of like people in your fans the public, or was it the betrayals, the personal ones? Because I know that some of the people that betrayed you, I'm thinking of one lady in particular, it is very well known. They had a very long and productive and seemingly deep friendship with you.
Yes.
And it seemed at first, especially with some of those things that people were saying, hey, he's admitting it, where it was just personal apologies. Like, why did you do this? I don't understand it.
The answer to your question is the personal. You can often overlook the fan type stuff because they don't know you. They don't know you. They've never spent any time really with you. You know what I mean? They're not, they're not invested in your daily life. So, that they're kind of on the periphery of this. Plus, a lot of those people that are strangers to you and me have a whole laundry list of issues themselves. Their lives are probably full of struggles, full of heartache, full of disappointments, and they I don't know all the ins and outs and what they're dealing with, but that often has a lot to do with why they do what they do on the internet. So it wasn't so much that as it was the biggest heartbreak were the people that I was close to, the people that I would have bet you real green money were my friends, would support and defend me, and just threw me under the bus like like we had never built any friendship over the years. That was the hardest part. And I even wrote them in a couple of cases privately. I wrote them and apologized and said, please tell me what I did. What did I do to you? What in the world happened that you would take this position against me and publicly? I mean, if you had any integrity, just call me. You know what I mean? Like if we were ever friends, pick the phone up and call me and say, this has really troubled me for a while and I wanted to talk to you about it. See, that's the way grown-ups who have
Yes.
any kind of mature relationship with other grown-ups that they've worked with and been friends with for years, that's the way they handle things. They don't jump on frickin' Twitter and, and crucify you and skewer you and ruin your career. So I wrote them and asked them what happened and why, and I'm so sorry. And I've always considered us friends, and please give me the opportunity to talk to me about, what had bothered you so much. They didn't even reply.
How
They're
could
not,
they?
they weren't interested. They weren't interested in an apology. They weren't interested in reconciliation. They weren't interested in resolution. They just saw this as an opportunity to knock me off of the spot that I was in, and put me in my place for whatever reason they felt I deserved that.
So this is subtext, but I have heard you allude. So you obviously office politics, like, oh, he was only the second bit string in this one production, but his name was on the front box. So obviously office politics probably played a role in it.
Yeah.
That actually did come up in one of the court proceedings.
Oh yeah, it did. And I found that incredibly telling, because when I heard that, my first response was, what does that have to do with anything?
Mhm.
You're tipping your hand. You know what I mean? You're letting your true animosity show.
So was it politics? Are you, I don't know if this is, well, I mean, I don't know. You're kind of like, I think at your point in your career, you could almost do anything. And I mean, as long as you weren't hurting your fans, really, you're just independent at this point, right? You're pretty strong. So could I ask, do you consider yourself a political conservative? I mean, dare I even ask,
Oh
did
yeah,
you vote for Trump or anything like that?
I'm conservative. I'm conservative.
Yeah.
I'm conservative.
And do you,
And as you would imagine, a lot of people in the entertainment industry are not. So there is a stigma attached. There is a target often on your back. In fact, if you are conservative in any way, or if you're very demonstrative about your faith, both of those things, people tend to feel the need to lay low in the entertainment industry because they want to work, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They need jobs. They want to get cast. They want to work, and they want to succeed in their career. And when you know that a lot of the vast majority of the people in that industry are not on the same, not, you know, in the same place that you are. And then there are even a handful above that that are physically antagonistic toward people that are conservative or religious in some way. They don't like it so much that they literally badmouth them because for whatever reason, they can't stand that those people even exist. So
it is interesting to know. I feel for you, man. I've had, you know, even the news industry, there's a fair amount of that. Actors. I mean, I've been to high school. I know how the drama kids are, the theater kids. Just a little bit crazy, a little bit crazier than all the rest.
you know what was funny? I'd like to say something real quick for your listeners, viewers. You mentioned something a minute ago about how one person in particular during the depositions talked about how I was playing a supporting role in this show, and yet my name was on the front cover of the DVD, that they were the main character of that show. Well, that's all true, except there are a couple of things they didn't point out. Number one, I don't have a single solitary thing to do with what's put on those DVD covers. I have nothing to do with that.
So how is it your fault?
Somebody somewhere in an office somewhere designs those inserts, and they get vetted through people, and then they get sent to a printing company and printed and distributed and collated and shrink wrapped and sent out. I didn't even know that. In fact, I was surprised to find out when that show came out, someone in the UK said, "Did you see this?" And it was a picture of the front cover of one of these DVDs of this particular show. And there was a little banner that said, featuring the voice of Vic Mignogna. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know they did anything like that. I was really, you know, quite humbled and really kind of blown away. I didn't know they did that, and I certainly didn't have anything to do with it. I had no influence over it whatsoever. And not to mention the fact, and this is one other point about that made it so funny that she brought that up. Because number one, I had nothing to do with that. Why would you hold that against me? I had nothing to do with it. And secondly, one of the other voice actors who attacked me, jumped on the Hate Vic bandwagon, also was a supporting character in that show at the same level I was. And guess what? The next DVD release that came out after the one that I was on, had featuring the voice of this guy.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Why aren't we canceling? You know, why aren't we mad about that? It's exactly the same. So, you know, people decide that they put the cart in front of the horse. Oftentimes they decide how they feel about someone irrationally, void of any real fact, of any objective fact. They decide what they feel about someone, and then they start looking for things to support their hatred. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I slapped you in the face, so that's why you slapped me back, or that's why we're not friends. You just decided you hated me, and then you start looking for reasons to hate me because I never did anything to you.
That's how humans work. They are deeply irrational.
It happens a lot.
So things got messy. At first, it seemed like, oh well, his career is totally done. It was crazy, by the way. You guys, it's hard to explain, but at the time, it was like we announced a new event with Vic Mignogna. Like in the next day, they're like, "Oh no, we're so sorry, forgive us." please have mercy on us, Twitter. And then they would
and
cancel. And
yeah,
that,
and
that,
you know,
that was
and
repeated ad nauseum.
And do you know who they're bending over to? Like 5 or 10 people. 5 or 10 haters on the internet who are not their customers. You don't even know who these people are, Peter. You don't know their real names. You don't know their real names. You don't know where they live. And they probably are 20 states away from you. They're not coming to your event. They're just trying to cause trouble and spread hatred. And there are 5 or 10 of them. And some of these business owners and some of these convention organizers, for reasons that I can't even begin to understand, get all scared and literally get bullied and intimidated into canceling the event with me. And what's really hard to believe is, if you're a businessman and you're trying to put on an event to sell tickets and to bring attendees and customers to an event, do you make decisions that 500 people want you to make? Or do you make decisions that 5 people were pushing you to make? I mean, if you're a businessman, it seems pretty common sense. If 2 or 3, 400, 500 people are going to come to see this guy because they like his work, well, those are the people you want to cater to. Not 5 or 10 people on the internet who are negative and hateful.
Do you think convention, because Anime Matsuri was really the first big one to stand tall and firm.
Yeah.
And then we've had more than since to have I think just this last weekend, I think you were doing your Star Trek thing, but you've wearing a convention pretty recently.
Oh yeah. And the week before that, I was at Funko Pop Con in Orlando, and there was a huge turnout. Like my line at my table went from, I was at one end of the building at my table, and the line went to the other opposite wall end of the building all day.
So it looks like this tactic has lost much of its power. People are either learning, or they've just, they've grown a callous. They're just, there are always these crazy people. They always bother us, ignore them.
Well, the same handful of people have apparently not found anything else constructive to do with their lives, because they're still attacking. They're still doing what they do. Excuse me. But the only consolation, or I should say the biggest consolation, is that every event that stands against it, every event that ignores the hatred, that ignores the slander, that ignores the bullying, and brings me anyway, we have a great event. Hundreds of fans show up. Everybody has a wonderful time. It's all smiles. It's all positive and encouraging and uplifting. Exactly what you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them. I recently, I don't know if you saw a video that I put on Twitter about a week and a half or 2 ago about showing little snippets of all of these events, just some of the events that I've done since this cancel culture stuff started. And you can see for yourself these huge lines of people. And all of the organizers had a great experience. They all write me glowing testimonials and reviews about how great the experience was and how the fans were all so happy, and it was a great weekend. So the only thing that I've really been able to do to combat the attacks is to put out those facts, put out those videos of the reality of what happens at these events. If the organizers stand up to this and bring me, ignore the bullying and the intimidation, and bring me anyway, the fans show up and they're very grateful that I'm there, and they're grateful that the convention organizers brought me in. It's always positive. It's always wonderful. And I just want people, I really want people to know that. I want
Yeah, and
people to
just
know.
get
what-
back to doing good and engaging and just doing,
Yeah.
the positive
Yeah.
things that you were. So yeah, the negative is really hard. So I don't want to stay here much too longer. I think the last thing is,
Yeah, I'd rather not too.
yeah. Was there ever a point that Star Trek, your Star Trek project Beyond, was there any point where that was in danger? Because I remember I read conflicting reports, because at one point there was some person affiliated with it or claimed to be affiliated with that said, oh, we don't have anything to do with him. But I know for a fact that you just gave a tour over there and
Oh,
you
yeah.
have projects going on with that right now. So
Yeah. Well, here's
whatever
the
happened
here's
there,
the
it
answer.
didn't
Here's
seem to
the
work.
answer to that. Here's the answer to that question. During the height of the cancel culture stuff, a handful of people that worked on Star Trek Continues, for whatever reason, decided that they thought it would benefit them, you know? And again, these were people that I loved. These were people that we spent lots of quality time together. And, they felt like they needed to, for whatever reason, I think they figured they would somehow benefit from distancing themselves from me. But Star Trek Continues was my baby. I mean, there is no Star Trek Continues if I hadn't started it. And if I hadn't, pushed it through and executive produced it and put as much of my own time and money and effort and brought all of these wonderful people together to be a part of it. And so fortunately, there are plenty of people that were part of our production that I'm still great friends with. It's very similar to the voice acting community. People that are your real friends and, we're always genuine, they stick with you. And when adversity strikes, you find out who your real friends are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's that simple. When heartbreak or loss or devastation comes into your life, Peter, the people that step up and call you and text you and say, hey, buddy, let me take you to lunch. Let's get together. You want to go see a movie? What can I do to help? When adversity comes knocking at your door, Pete, you learn who your real friends were and who the people were that were just tagging along for what they could get out of it. And now they think it's to their advantage to distance themselves from you and throw you under the bus.
It is crazy. There will be a historical footnote about the Vic Mignogna saga. And I think hopefully
I hope not.
I think
I would
hopefully
hope not.
I don't know if anything is done on like anime subculture, internet culture, and you don't know. You don't know. But I hope it ends on a positive note, because your career is definitely going. Again, you are starting up a studio with some of the people for Anime Mitsuri to do your own dubbing. That's really cool. We need that, by the way. It seems like all the studios of voice acting were slowly getting eaten up one after another. So more independent. That's good.
There seems to be a real centralization and monopolization of anime, English dubbed anime. I do want to
Beyond.
I do also want to say about Star Trek Continues.
I keep getting the name wrong. Sorry.
That's okay. I do also want to say about that. The studio that we built, that we shot our series in, which is absolutely beautiful. It's a perfect replica of the original series sets. When we finished our series, another group came along led by an amazing man named Ray Tessie. Neutral Zone Studios came along and they took over the studio. And not only do they allow fan productions to come down there and shoot their own Star Trek fan productions, and you can imagine how many people are out there that grew up loving Star Trek and would give anything to put on a uniform and walk onto the bridge of the Enterprise and, and kind of be in Star Trek. It's kind of a childhood dream come true. It was for me. But not only do they do it, is it still standing and open in all of its beauty for fan productions, but one weekend every month, they open it up for free of charge for people to come from walk through the sets for free and take all the pictures and videos they want. And I go down, which is what I did this last weekend. I go down and I give the walkthroughs. I lead the walkthroughs personally because that studio was my baby. I rented that building. You know, I worked along with tons of other people to get the sets built and to shoot our series there. And I love any opportunity to be at the studio. So I go down and participate in those as well.
You get to help use those skills, the sewing skills your mom taught you.
Yeah, sewing, building, carpentry, sanding, painting, nailing, you name it. I did it all.
So let's end on this note. As a Christian, as a person, how do you feel like you've grown? Do you feel like there's special lessons that you felt Heavenly Father wanted you to learn? Do you feel like you're closer
Absolutely.
in your faith?
Absolutely. The moment that this stuff started happening in 2018, at beginning of 2019, actually, the moment it started, as a believer, the first question that comes to your mind is, why, God? What in the world is happening? Now, we know that God wasn't caught off guard. He wasn't surprised by what happened. He knew what was going to happen. He saw it coming. I think I strayed away in some ways. I got lazy in my faith and in my behavior. And in some ways, certainly nothing criminal, certainly nothing forcible. But I think I allowed a lot of the elements of the industry to lure me away from the person that I knew God wanted me to be. And I think that early on, I thought to myself, when the cancel stuff started happening, I thought to myself, okay, there are one of three possibilities here. Possibility number one, God never wanted me in the anime industry. I wanted to be in it. I saw it as an opportunity to act and perform, and I wanted it, and so I pursued it, but it was never what God wanted for me. That's option one. Possibility number two, God wanted me in the anime industry for a time, and that time has passed. And now I'm to move on and find what else God wants for me. Option three, God put me in this industry. He wants me in this industry. He has used me in many ways, in many lives in this industry. And he still wants me in this industry. And it is the enemy and those who are the enemies of me or that are not friendly to God or people of faith, that are rather antagonistic toward people like that, that are trying to run me out. And God still wants me in the industry, but the enemy is trying to force me out. Perhaps because there is potential to have a great influence for God's kingdom. You know, I don't mean to wax too religious here, but I've heard a lot of people say over the course of this ordeal, you know, Vic, if you think about it this way, it probably means that you were doing something really good for God because the enemy's working really hard to get you out of this industry.
Definitely.
He's throwing everything he can, people making up lies, slander, stories, Photoshop, all that garbage, throwing words around like rapist. I've never been accused of that. I've never been charged with anything, much less convicted of anything. Pedophile, these horrible words. And there's no accountability. Nobody can keep them from saying those things. They can just spout them off all they want. And they use these words that people just kind of recoil to, you know, it's like, ugh, I recoil to them. They're horrible. But a lot of people have suggested that maybe God has big plans that he wants me to continue in this field. And the enemies of God, the enemies of me, don't, you know, they're working overtime, you know, to try to ruin my ability to, or my place in this industry. I don't know. I don't pretend to know God's plan. I'm not God. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I could get in a car accident on the way home tonight. I don't know
Let's hope not.
No,
that would be a terrible way to present this interview.
Wouldn't that be crazy? Like, a side note, Vic said this on the interview, and then
he died.
But yeah, he called it. He called it, you guys. The point is, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen 10 minutes from now, much less 10 days or 10 years. So I am trying my best to learn whatever lessons God wanted me to learn from this ordeal. I think it has grown me a lot. People that know me really well tell me that they've seen a lot of changes and growth in certain areas of my behavior or my life. And for which I'm very grateful, because if I can learn something or become a better person through it, or even help someone else become a better person, then it would not have been in vain. I hope dearly to get the opportunity to see more fans, to do more events. I love, like I said, I love people. I love the fans. I'm so grateful for their support and their encouragement and their enthusiasm for my work over the years. I hope I get more opportunities to do that. And I'm just taking it a day at a time and hopefully following the path that I'm supposed to be on. And I wish no one ill will. I just wish people would leave me alone and get a hobby, you know, or I'm serious.
Get a healthy one, get
a hobby, get a relationship, write a book, build something, for crying out loud, create something, give something of value to the world. You know, take all of this negative, hurtful energy that you're wasting on ruining somebody who you don't even know and channel it into something productive. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, from your mouth to God's ear, I completely agree. And I'm happy. I feel like your trajectory is becoming a positive one. I think a lot of these changes that were for the negative in the culture, I feel like in some ways they are lessening. And, I am impressed by how you've handled it. A lot of people we've seen stories where people coming out of cancel culture didn't really come back themselves. They became more of a shell or something that was very angry and hard. But that's not really what's happened with you. And I'm sure that example probably means a lot to a lot of people who you may never hear about. But
I hope so.
I'm impressed.
Because people can choose to reflect their values and reflect their faith in every situation, not just good situations. You know what I mean? Like, if I win the Academy Award for Best Actor, it's easy for me to stand up on stage and go, I just want to thank God for this privilege and the opportunity to be in this industry. And thank you, Lord, for, these opportunities. Well, that's easy enough. That's a great, wonderful, positive thing. And you know what I mean? And you're using it as a platform to share your faith. But what about bad stuff? What about heartbreak? What about extreme loss? What about incredible slander and defamation and hatred? Using that to try to share your faith and focus and direct people to God and his love for them. That's just as important as using the positive moments in your life to do that.
I think that is probably the entire point. As Christ suffered for doing good and brought about so much more good, I think sometimes those of us that want to follow him, sometimes we are asked to take on similar trials. And
I think probably that's even those are probably even more significant, because it's easy to praise when everything's going great.
Yep.
It's a very, very different thing to trust and try to stay focused on God's sovereignty in a situation when things are going to hell in a handbasket, and when you have no idea what's around the next corner, and you're beaten down and and discouraged, and feeling so overwhelmed. I think it's those opportunities where the rubber really meets the road. That's where you really find out, whether or not the things you say you believe
you truly believe
are really, are really real or not.
Well, Vic, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. When you gave me the call the other day to remind me about the appointment, I really appreciate that. I've been going through kind of a health crisis situation, and things with work and stuff weren't really lining up. And I know it was just figure out work schedule, but for me, for whatever reason, it felt fairly meaningful at that moment. So I just wanted to tell you, thank you very much for that, for taking the time to do this interview. You're a fascinating guy.
Privilege. My privilege, my friend. Thank you.
So, Vic, where can people find you? What's the next big project for Mr. Mignogna?
Well, I'm as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm at a rehearsal right now for a Christmas musical here in Dallas that I'm going to be a part of. And then I've already got several signing events lined up next year. First thing in January, there are fan appreciation weekends at the Star Trek studio, neutralzonestudios.com. Your viewers and followers can look that up. We've got another weekend of that coming up in January, February, March, April, and I'll be down there. If you are a Star Trek fan, or if you know anybody that's a Star Trek fan, it is it's an experience like none you will ever have in your life. It's like stepping into a dream. And so there's that. You can check out the details for that. It's at neutralzonestudios.com. You can follow our Star Trek series. We made 11 full-length live-action episodes that finish the original series of Star Trek, all online, free to watch at StarTrekContinues.com. You can follow me on Twitter. I do have Instagram and stuff, but I never use it. I post where I'm going to be and things that are going on in my life and career on my Twitter. So you can follow me there. You can join our Star Trek official group Facebook page. And I would love to see as many of you as possible in the months ahead as we go into 2023. If you see that I'm going to be at an event anywhere near you, please come and say hello.
Well, most excellent. You guys should definitely check this out, and check out Mr. Mignogna's long filmography. He is a surprise talent. He is in all kinds of things you wouldn't think to find.
Well, if you live long enough, if you're old enough, you end up doing a lot of stuff, apparently.
Well, let's hope there's many more to come.
Let's hope so. From your lips to God's ears. And I also want to say that AM Studios, the new dubbing studio that we've started up, we've got a nice long list of licenses that we're looking at that we will be starting up some dubbing, some series in the new year. I'm currently working on some audiobooks. I have several audiobooks that I've narrated that are on audible.com and iTunes. All of my music, I have 6 music CDs that are all available online, either on iTunes or Amazon. Also, you can check out my fan club, my online fan club, the Risembool Rangers, Risembool. That's the little town that Edward Elric came from in Full Metal. Feel free to join. It's free to join, and you'll instantaneously have thousands of friends around the world that love the things you love. So hopefully good things are coming. I'm directing an original Christian animated project. So there's a lot going on, and I am incredibly grateful to God for the opportunities that He's given me, the opportunity to talk with you, and certainly grateful to all the fans for their support and encouragement.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vic. Good luck with your play and all your projects, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Buddy, Merry Christmas to you. God bless you as well.
Before I go, I just want to give a quick shout out to some people that made this interview possible. Of course, Vic himself, who agreed to an email to do this interview, and I am super grateful. Also, big shout out to Society Reviews, a wonderful writer, media reviewer, also is on YouTube. Also, Drunk C3PO, fairly well known YouTuber. Both of them were very generous. They helped me contact people, figure it out, put things together. So this interview wouldn't really have happened without their encouragement. And if any of you guys ever want me to interview someone or you have ideas, please feel free to reach out. You can check me out on Twitter at HappyWarriorP, and my DMs are always open, or you can email me at petepishke@protonmail.com. And of course, once again, everyone, thank you for watching, and please have a very Merry Christmas.